Welcome to our first project tutorial. Today we are going to be working on making a Sunbonnet Sue. We call this particular type of project an applique, and I'm going to walk you through step by step what you need to make this project and also how to do this and some different options that you have for varying. In addition, I do want to show you that there are very many different ways that you can do this. There are all kinds of patterns that have evolved over the different years in this particular type of quilt block. And this is just a pillowcase that I did for 4th of July. I also have a quilt, and as you can see for the quilt, you can even vary within your quilt and see that you get different looks depending on how you mix and match different fabrics. And then I also have behind me even another version here where we have varied different floral designs that complement one another. So I hope that you will stick around and that you will get your supplies gathered and join us on this tutorial today. Today, our first project is going to be an applique using what is known as Sunbonnet Sue. It's also known as Dutch Girl as some references. So you have a few options for finding a particular pattern. Before I show you the pattern, I'd like to tell you some materials that you're going to need. So you are going to need the fabrics of your choice. I recommend 2 to 3 depending on the design. You also are going to need some thread, a pair of scissors. You are also going to need a way to cut out your pattern for the Sunbonnet Sue, and you have a couple of options. There are books available that have the patterns. I also have an old magazine, not pictured here, and I also have the option to cut it out on a die cutting machine. So this is with AccuQuilt. So you have a couple of options, and then you're also going to need some heat and bind so that when you cut this out, you have a way to adhere it to the background fabric of your choice. All right, you're also going to possibly want to use some starch to make sure you get your fabric good and stiff. I do recommend buying a concentrated bottle or a bottle that you can transfer to another smaller spray bottle so that you can refill as needed. One other thing that you're going to want to have handy anytime you do quilting is an iron, because you will need to iron anything that you are pressing with seams a certain direction, and so you will want to have an iron also handy when you sew. So one thing I recommend that is not required by any means is a little portable trash can that can sit on the tabletop. I like to have this handy to put the scraps in as I'm cutting pieces. And also, this is also another nifty little tool that you can use to vacuum the pieces off of your mat when you're done cutting as well, and that helps keep your area nice and neat. Again, these are 2 components not necessarily required, but they do make the job a little easier and more convenient for your project. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and get your pieces cut out from your pattern. This is the Sunbonnet Sue Visits Quilt in a Day book published by Eleanor Burns. And inside this book, you will see different patterns that you can use. So one of the first things you want to do is to take your heat and bind that you have, and you want to trace the pattern onto this heat and bind, and that will be the easiest way for you to get your pattern. And basically you can use just a regular pencil, and you can just sketch along the pattern and cut out each piece separately from the next piece, and that will get you the pieces that you need in order to make your Sunbonnet Sue. Now, as I mentioned, I've already cut some pieces out, and when you get them cut out, you will see that you will just be laying those out and matching them up with whatever choices you have in your fabrics. So here is the bonnet that I have cut with a little floral skirt, and then I also have some different versions of the little shoes cut out so that you can mix and match those to match any colors in the pattern that you would like. You can also decide if you want her arm to blend in, or if you want that to also be a different color. that you sew on. So your possibilities are endless when it comes to laying out your pattern. Once you get it cut out, you can just mix and match different pieces to decide how you want your Sunbonnet Sue to look. So you will just sit that on the piece and just press gently. And then you can just make sure it's adhered. And then when you have that added to the back, then you can just come to the back and you will be able to peel off the paper from the backing. And you will notice, if you can tell, I left a piece without glue so that you can see the difference in the shiny texture versus the raw fabric here when you have heat and bond. And so basically this is going to be how you press this down for your project. So you would literally have this pressed and you would just put this on your block and press that down again to make your Sunbonnet Sue. So once you have put this on the back, as we just talked about, then you can just start lining up your pieces where you want them to go. And once you get that, you'll just press them and hold it in place again the same way that we did this to put it on your block. So I've already done this one with it completely put down. And now I want to go ahead and stitch this to my block. Now, one thing I want to show you guys is that if you have any decorative stitches on your machine, for example, this one had some hearts, you can embellish different parts of your block with cute little designs just to add a little character to it. And so I've done the dress, a little bit on the sleeve here, and the little bonnet. But we need to adhere all of this onto the block. And you have several options. If your machine has a blanket stitch, that is a very pretty applique stitch for doing these types of projects. If your machine does not have one, then you can still use a zigzag. And I recommend that when you do this project, if you do a zigzag stitch and it's not one that is a triple zigzag or a double zigzag when it sews, that you at least go around it twice to ensure that you've gotten all of your edges down with your zigzag. Now for my project today, I am going to be using a different sewing machine than the one that I taught you simple stitches on, because I do actually have a blanket stitch and I want to do this one showing you that stitch today. So now I am ready to put the blanket stitch on the whole entire Sunbonnet Sue. So what I like to do is line up the edge of the actual applique and bring my needle right into a starting point on the edge and go ahead and lower it. Now, just as we learned in the previous video, we are going to lower the presser foot. But what's different about this one is that there is no seam allowance. So we have to watch the needle and keep our needle right along the edge of the fabric the entire time to do our stitch. Now, my machine has the blanket stitch, and so I'm just going to stitch and show you how to keep that aligned so that you will see how this goes. So again, you want to just continue to keep the fabric at the edge of your needle and just let it do what it's going to do. Find a comfortable spot on the presser foot. Something different about this sewing machine compared to my other one is that it also allows me to adjust the volume of the foot, and I can make this as slow as I want to whenever I am putting the stitch on. Now, if you start to get off, again, you can stop and lower the foot and just turn it to kind of keep it where you want it, and then just continue to pick up and sew. And again, you can go as fast as you want to go or as slow as you want to go. So here I'm going to just show you that you can go extremely fast, or you can bring it down by adjusting your foot pedal and just go as slow as you want to move until you're comfortable with making sure you get it stitched the way it needs to be. And so when you do applique, you want to go around the entire section where everything is pieced. So notice here I'm coming to a curve, so I'm going to lower my needle and I'm going to just turn this around to get this back on the edge of my fabric, and I'm just going to continue to stitch. We're going to go all the way around the hat. Once I finish the hat, we're going to go all the way around the dress. We also need to go all the way around the shoe, and we also need to go all the way around her arm and her little hand. So when you do this, you have to follow the pattern all the way around the entire Sunbonnet Sue. So again, just to show you, just to keep it on the edge. Again, just keep your needle and your eye on the edge of that fabric and just let it do its thing. And then again, when you start getting close to where you're not, lower that needle and just turn it, realign it, and then continue. Again, when you start to get off the edge, just continue to turn your fabric and keep it aligned to keep sewing. Now this particular Sunbonnet Sue does not have heat and bond under it, so this one is going to have a little bulk here. So this is something that I did intentionally because I do want you to see that the heat and bond helps you keep it in place and sew much smoother than if you don't, because you're going to see that if your fabric's coming up, you're going to be fighting with that the whole time. So I do like to show you guys what happens if you don't use something like that. So I'm just going to continue to sew around with this, and then when I finish, I'm just going to show you some examples of some that are completely finished with this all the way around. Okay, so when you get to the end, so notice I've gone all the way around the entire hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now pull it, and you're going to see that we have threads attached. So I'm just going to take some embroidery scissors. Notice they curve upward. This helps you kind of cut a little easier. And I'm going to go ahead and get that out of the way. You're going to flip it over to the back also and clip that little thread off. And so now you just pick the next section that you want to sew, and you just continue to go around the block, making sure you pull your threads back out here for enough room. Also, something I want to show you, the reason we zigzag or use a blanket stitch is because fabric will fray otherwise. And that is also another good reason to use embroidery scissors that kind of point upward, because it allows you to come into the block and actually trim little frays like that and kind of get those out of the way once you get it sewn, so that you get a neat little block. So this is just something to keep in mind that you might want to invest in, as a nice little pair of embroidery scissors. And so once we finish, again, we're just going to go back under the machine and we're going to pick the next thing. So we're going to focus for this part. I'm just going to go ahead and start with the dress and just follow it all the way around. And when I finish the dress, I'll probably go and do the whole entire arm and her little hand, and then I'll end on the foot. And you just continue to do that, keeping your eye on the edge of the fabric, making sure your needle stays along the edge until you completely get around the applique. And then when you finish with your applique all the way around completely, you do want to go back to your iron and just press the entire block completely flat, just to make sure that any little puckers that you might have gotten are flattened with an iron. And that's it. That is a simple little applique that you have completed, and you can make as many as you want and piece as many as you want and put it into a project. And you'll just continue to do this until you have completely finished the entire applique. So once you finish and get all the way around, this is something that you will see. Now, if yours is a zigzag, you're going to have zigzag stitches, not the blanket stitch. But you will see that we've gone all the way around the hat, we've gone around the hand, the foot, even the little arm and the dress, and you have a complete appliqued little block. and then again you're going to go back and just press it flat. And again, I just want to show you that you can embellish it different ways. This one has little hearts that I embellished again that I mentioned earlier, and then this one has a little floral print. So you have all kinds of things. I have made them where I sew an actual piece of ribbon here. And again, you can use a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch for your ribbon. You can also do some rickrack if you want, or some little lace strip. So you've got endless options. But this is actually going to be a project that is a gift for a new baby, a new great niece that's coming into our family anytime now. And so I am actually going to have 12 different versions of these combinations for a baby quilt block. So you can make a pillow. You can use this to be the panel for a bag. You can actually make one just to frame it in a kid's room. The possibilities are endless. So I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial today, and I hope that you will come back and see what we have next time.